Hey guys, Shaun back with another Let's Play. We're doing the greatest game ever made, as of 1998. It's Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time for the Nintendo 64. Very well-respected game, very influential. Yeah, this really is a good opening theme. I don't sit down and listen to this opening theme that much, but this is a good opening theme. Well, let's get started with the game. Okay, so, pick our name. Call ourselves after the greatest of the Resident Evil protagonists. So, Ocarina of Time. Playing this on the Nintendo 64, which is why the visual quality isn't quite as good as like the Super Mario 64 Let's Play. We played that on the Wii U Virtual Console, so that was 480p. It was emulating it at 480p, upscaling it to 1080. So it looked pretty clean. I do have this on the Wii U Virtual Console, but I think during the Mario 64 Let's Play, there were issues with the right analog stick being used as the C buttons. And so the wrong input was being read when I was using the analog stick, and I wasn't happy about that. And so generally, just for to make it more comfortable to play, we're playing this on the Nintendo 64. I'm using the Retro Fighters Brawler 64 pad, which I kickstarted. I was one of the kickstarters for that, and it's a really nice Nintendo 64 controller. It's very comfortable. The analog stick's nice. You don't have to worry too much about playing Mario Party with this. So you might ask, like, why Ocarina of Time is the first Zelda Let's Play? And so I'm a big Zelda. I'm a big Zelda fan. And like Link to the Past was the first Zelda game I started with, and there was an intention to do that Zelda game first. Wasn't really going to bother with Zelda 1 or Zelda 2, I was going to start with Link to the Past, and I did record Link to the Past a while back, and I was not happy with how it all came out. So that was scrapped, and I was going to redo it, but I really wasn't feeling it. When I tried to redo it, so we're doing this instead. Of course, one of the big differences between this and Link to the Past is this game is way longer. It's like if you check the live stream archive, we do have a full playthrough of Link to the Past on there that I did for live stream. We have a full playthrough of this as well. That I've already done for live stream, but Link to the Past I had done in under 3 hours. Ocarina of Time took, I think, 4 sessions to finish on live stream. So this is a longer game. We will go back and do Link to the Past at some point. I do want to do that for the channel at some point, but right now, Ocarina of Time. And starting with Ocarina of Time isn't necessarily a bad thing. While I would normally have, while I did intend to start with Link to the Past, specifically because Link to the Past introduces a lot of the mechanics that the Zelda series runs with. Link to the Past does introduce a lot of the mechanics the Zelda series runs with. You can start with Ocarina pretty reasonably. as an introduction to Zelda, for the sake of the Let's Plays. Because up until Skyward Sword, this was actually the earliest game in the Zelda timeline. And based on this game, the end of this game splits off into what we thought was 2 timelines. Hyrule Historia, the official Zelda, one of the official Zelda books. Oh, I want to change that. Yeah, I don't think I've ever noticed that. Huh. One of the official Zelda books, Hyrule Historia, did actually have a proper it had an official timeline, and it revealed that there is actually a 3rd timeline that branches off from this game that we didn't expect. But prior to Skyward Sword, and especially prior to the release of Hyrule Historia, this was the first game in the timeline for us all. And I say prior, especially prior to Hyrule Historia, because after Hyrule Historia came out, it revealed that like the Minish Cap and the 4 Swords games both happened before this. But I think for the most part, like... Actually, you know what? There is actually something in there, I think. No, I'm thinking of somewhere else. Alright. Yeah, starting with this is a reasonable idea if you want the continuity of the later games. Because... like I say, this game is generally like the earliest in the timeline. Wind Waker follows this game in one of the timelines. Twilight Princess follows this game in one of the timelines. Majora's Mask is a direct sequel to this game. And it's like, while you could do the Zelda series in like any order, really, with a couple of exceptions, like you'd want to do Majora's Mask after this, you'd want to do Phantom Hourglass after Wind Waker, and so on and so forth. If you start with this, you can go essentially anywhere based on the timeline. Because like after this, there was Majora's Mask, and then there was Wind Waker, and then there was Twilight Princess. We're talking console games. But after this, do Majora's Mask after this because it's a direct sequel, and then you can go anywhere after that. You could go into Wind Waker, you could go into Twilight Princess. They're both applicable. While Wind Waker came first, Twilight Princess is on a separate timeline, so you're not really ruining anything with that. So we'll see how we go, because I do want to do more Zelda games as we go through as we go on with the channel. And so now to actually talk about the game, like I said, we're playing this off Nintendo 64. This is the first release cartridge. So this is going to have the original Fire Temple theme. It's going to have the original Gerudo symbol, which were both removed in later versions of the game. The Fire Temple theme was removed in later versions of the Nintendo 64 version, whereas the Gerudo symbol, I think that only changed... oh, frame rate there. I think the Gerudo symbol only changed with the GameCube re-release. So we've been summoned by the Great Deku Tree, but to get to the Great Deku Tree we need the sword and the shield. So you need to find the sword, and then you need to get 40 rupees to get the shield. No, I'm good. And equip the shield. awesome. So yeah, visual quality is less than the Mario 64 playthrough because this is coming straight off of Nintendo 64, and Nintendo 64 is a pain to actually capture decent quality footage from. But it's more comfortable to play that way because the 64's controller is so awkward. It's like, oh hey, you want to play PlayStation games? Play them on the PS3. The controller's practically the same. Nintendo 64, you want to play Nintendo 64 games? Well, if you're playing a game that requires heavy use of the C buttons, yeah, you either want to get like maybe a custom controller. I think there were supposed to be custom controllers. I need to change that. I think there were supposed to be custom controllers for like custom classic controllers for the Wii, which could be used on the Wii U as well. That were essentially Nintendo 64 controllers, but I've not looked into that in a while. There we go. And now we're at the Great Deku Tree. But yeah, generally the most comfortable way of playing Nintendo 64 is just on Nintendo 64. There's no real alternative for it. And the video output for Nintendo 64 is such a pain to deal with. You can get it to a level where you're comfortable with it to play it. Like you can play it through a composite, and it's not great, but you could be comfortable playing it like that. If you try to record it, if you try to capture it for record or stream, composite comes out horribly. Really does. So what we're doing is, this is a setup that took me a long time to actually end up with. There were a bunch of hoops I had to jump through. We are capturing through S-Video. So this is an S-Video output, and it turns out that like the European Nintendo 64, the PAL 64, has a really weird issue with its S-Video output. You need specific cables for it that are set up for the PAL. There's something with the output. It's not about the 50 Hz like a lot of other stuff would be with PAL. The wire, the S-Video cable that you get needs to have a specific resistor or shielding or something. Otherwise you end up with, if you get standard S-Video N64 cables and use them on a PAL N64, you end up with an overbright picture. Oversaturated in it. It's not great. And so I got special PAL S-Video cables. And to play it, it was great. It's like you end up with this. Which looks a lot better. It's very jagged and pixely, as you would generally expect with the N64, but there's no wavery signal like there is with composite, which is one of the big problems I have with N64 composite. However, like it's a 240p signal still, but the issue with the S-Video cables I got for that was they were great to play. There was no sound coming through the right channel, I think, for some reason. And so that was a pain I had to deal with. What do? I've got an S-Video to HDMI converter, which upscales, so we're upscaling 240p to 1080p. And honestly, it looks surprisingly decent, I'd say. It stretches the screen out, although that doesn't look as bad as you'd think. Although for the upload, I'm going to be converting it back to 4:3 in edit, so you won't see the stretch. But it looks surprisingly decent, honestly, everything considered. But yeah, the right sound channel, there was no sound coming through the right channel, that was a pain. It was fine to play with, because I didn't really notice it coming out of the TV, but capturing, like, there's no sound out of the right channel, you'll easily notice that. Okay, let me see. I used to be good enough at the aiming that I could always get a bullseye. I played this game a lot as a kid. And I used to know the exact spot you need to aim at to get a bullseye every time on anything. I don't mean like weak points for specific enemies, I mean the exact spot you aim at based on where the slingshot is. What was it? Yeah, the S video. So I was at a loss really, because I'd spent the money, gotten this S video cable special for PAL systems, and the S video to HDMI converter. And I spent a few months like looking for some kind of solution for it. I ended up going on eBay and found a Japanese Nintendo 64 going for £20. £20, not brand new, a £20 Japanese N64 in good condition. No wires or anything, just the Japanese Nintendo 64. There we go. And so I looked into it, and the PAL wires work on the Japanese N64. Usually there'd be the thought of, oh, I'll need to get a Japanese plug. I'll need to get a Japanese power supply and some sort of converter for that. And no, it turns out while Japanese and PAL power sockets output different power, the N64 takes the same voltage regardless of region, and the transformer, the big brick that you plug into the Nintendo 64, because you got the plug, and you have at the end of the plug, the bit you plug into the Nintendo 64 is the power brick. And the power brick, regardless of region, always converts to the same voltage. So you can just use the PAL power supply on a Japanese Nintendo 64. And the same's true of an American N64. So that was great. There's the concern about region locking, because like before the Switch, every Nintendo home console was region locked. There are some exceptions with revisions of certain systems, like the top loader NES isn't region locked as far as I know. I think one of the Super Nintendo revisions might not be region locked, but for the most part, like until Switch came out, every Nintendo home system was region locked. The region locking on Nintendo 64 is actually just two little bits of plastic in the cartridge slot that can easily be pulled out. And so at that point you can then play any region. And then there's the concern of, oh, but like NTSC-J and NTSC-U output at 60 Hz, whereas the the PAL outputs at 50. 23 is number one. And so what's the thought about PAL games running on a Japanese system then? Once you get rid of the little tabs, the little bits of plastic. Well, it turns out that it's not the game that determines what hertz it runs at, it's the console itself. So you can run PAL games at 60 Hz if you are playing on an NTSC console. So that's cool. And so once that was done, I just got standard S video cables. And now here we are. And we're finally doing... This isn't the first... that's not what I was after. This isn't the first N64 game I've done. Because... by the time this comes out, it won't have been that long since we did... Majora's Mask on stream. And we did Majora's Mask on the Nintendo 64. It's like the Ocarina of Time stream was done on Wii U with the Virtual Console, but the Majora's Mask stream was done after I got the video set up. And yeah, I think the video for that came out pretty nice. It was stretched, yeah, because I can't really. Not entirely sure if I can actually change the aspect ratio during stream like that, but this will be 4:3 after the edit. But I think it came out pretty nicely. Alright, so let's talk about the actual game itself. This room, I want to be a little careful with because you got eggs on the ceiling. Now, once again, like earlier, when I first showed off the slingshot, there was a point where I could hit the exact spot to break those eggs every time. That wasn't too bad there, because I only missed once. But there was a point where I could do it every time. Because I played this game a lot as a kid. I had this on Nintendo 64 as a kid. I have multiple copies of this now for some reason. Yeah, I played this a lot as a kid. It was one of the N64 games I had that I really enjoyed. Because with N64 games, you took what you could get. And by that I mean I took what I could get. Because, like, PlayStation... Like, let's be fair. Everybody had a chipped PlayStation. Everybody was able to play the burnt, copied games. And as a kid, I was okay with that because it just meant I could play games. It's not really something I do now if I can avoid it. Let's see, 2, 3, 1. But with the Nintendo 64, like, even without the whole getting copied games to the PlayStation, Nintendo 64 games were more expensive anyway. The cartridges were just more expensive. It's part of the reason why the 64 didn't do as well as the PlayStation. On top of the lower storage capacity that cartridges have compared to CDs. The cartridges were more expensive to produce. And so the games were more expensive. And so just took what I could get on 64. I was like, got a new game, played the hell out of it. And here's the first boss. And this, I think, this is the boss itself is weak, but it's a fantastic introduction. And I think, like, the model of this is amazing. Especially for Nintendo 64, this game really pushed the hardware. Damn it. So what you need to do is, when the eye goes red, shoot her in the eye with a slingshot. Now, if she climbs on the roof, she's gonna lay eggs. But while she's laying eggs, the eye goes red. Damn it, I got stuck through the other side of the leg. There we go, still got it in 2 cycles. If I'd continued using Deku Sticks, would have taken less hits, but 2 cycles is really kind of the best you can get anyway. Yeah, the eye turns red when she's laying eggs. Hit her immediately as soon as she starts laying the eggs. Never have to deal with the eggs. Like I say, easy boss, but it's a fantastic introduction. And the model quality is amazing. I love it. It's brilliant. And that's done.